So what happens when your gaming system, when that gaming system that you love, that you have put so much energy and passion, momentum, money into, dies? Where do we go? What do we do? What are some of the options? And I'm going to be using X-Wing miniatures as a very, very interesting example in approaching this question. And then, of course, we'll turn it over into the comments for you guys. I jumped into X-Wing miniatures Classic version 1 because I could see that this was going to be a really, really fun game to play, but also how fast the community was going to evolve. I mean, after all, it's Star Wars. At the time, I was playing Wings of Glory, World War I. Fantastic game. Still love playing Wings of Glory. And they had sold the Path Flight system to Fantasy Flight Games to make X-Wing. So knowing how Wings of Glory plays, knowing that it would be improved in X-Wing, there was a triplicity here, a trifecta of it's an amazing system. On top of that, it's Star Wars. So a community is going to happen overnight. You don't even have to sell the game. And three, the fact that it was pre-painted miniatures. I loved that idea. Being a wargamer, I understand the value of the visuals of painted miniatures. I've got a massive paint log usually. To jump into a system that looks fantastic, wow, I'm sold. I'm in. So when we jumped into that, I jumped in hard. I loved playing the good guys. I loved playing the Imperial Navy, restoring order to the galaxy against the Rebel Alliance. I knew I was going to primarily play the Imperials, but I wanted to collect all of the factions, which at the time of release, the Rebel Alliance and the Imperials, and then, of course, filling out to bounty hunters and scum and all that type of stuff later. I knew I wanted to jump in with everything. So I was ready to commit. And this was before, again, this is Classic 1.0, before even Epic. I was in. But I also knew it's Fantasy Flight Games. So Star Wars is popular. They're going to push it. But at some point, there's going to be a reboot, because what Fantasy Flight does is they have their game system. They milk a lot of expansions. When they've hit the internal numbers and they can't milk more expansions or enough have hit the secondary market, they release a second version of the game, forcing you to rebuy everything. Now, in all fairness, when they do a second edition of a game, or a third edition or a fourth edition, it's not like Games Workshop where they just kind of change nothing and force you to rebuy everything. They do listen to the customer base and say, okay, some areas that were a little wonky in the other rule set, we're going to tighten them up. And they also look to innovate and add something new. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes not so well. So I wasn't always and haven't been salty when they've gone to a new edition, because I feel like, all right, at least we're getting something. But I knew going in, hey, I'm not just collecting one faction. I'm collecting multiple factions. I love big miniature games. I love big war games, big battles. So when they released Epic, I was playing that. But also multiple ships. I want to throw down 10 X-Wings. I want to throw down 10 or 20 Headhunters. So from that perspective, I knew, hey, I'm going to be all in. I'm going to commit. It's a fantastic community. But at some point, they're going to do the reboot, and they're going to force you to rebuy. Well, when that happened, I was aware in that they're not going to redo all the ships. They're going to offer you a conversion kit. Now, in all fairness, with their other games like Descent, they offered conversion kits. Back in the day with Talisman, they offered a conversion kit. I didn't realize to convert one faction or convert most of my stuff to playable, it's going to be like $600 or $700. Like that's crazy. And now you'd say, well, Fritz, you're an outlier. You're insane. Exercise some impulse control here and get things under control. There were a lot of enthusiasts that jumped into this game because it was very affordable, especially picking stuff up on the secondary market. You had people jump in, buy a number of ships, and then sell them for relatively cheap. So you didn't even have to go full retail, paying $12 for an A-Wing. After the initial release, I was picking them up for like $2 or $3 a pop. So it was very affordable if you were willing to organically grow your collection and kind of wait for that to happen. But when 2.0 rolled around, I was ready for it. And I find that when a new edition comes out, you're faced with two things. You're faced, and that window is very, very slim. Very, very slim. You're faced with buying into the second edition, whatever that means. Now, maybe it's a complete reboot. Maybe it's a small game or X-Wing miniature, a couple of cards. Or if you're not going to buy into the second edition because it's too much, or just generally you don't like that second edition, that's a possibility too. And I'm kind of on the fence with 2.0. I mean, I've played it. I enjoy it from time to time. But I don't think there was enough of a change warranted from the first edition. But the window is, and what I chose was to go in even more for first edition. Now you're like, well, Fritz, you're buying into a dead system. True, but I'm buying into physical. Now it's kind of interesting because I knew that being X-Wing miniatures and being Star Wars, there's still a massive classic community out there. And by sticking with 1.0, the only thing I'm missing out on, but not really, the tournament scene. I still play in tournaments. I still play competitively. I'm either borrowing some friends' ships or having conversion kits that are good enough to play on the types of lists that I want to play. But in terms of big games and massive X-Wing games, that's still fine. There's still a massive community of 1.0 players or classic players. But the reason why I chose to buy in on first edition, buying into a dead system, is when they announce a second edition, immediately what you see, all the first edition stuff goes on clearance. It gets cleaned out very, very fast. A lot of players start to dump stuff on secondary markets, eBay or just at the gaming club, that it's a chance to literally pick up stuff that you've missed in your collection to complete, or to even bulk up more, where you're like, look, maybe I wanted to play big battles. Maybe I wanted 4 baby Star Destroyers, but I'm not going to pay $100 a pop. Well, now I'm getting them for 15 a pop. Like that's your chance. The window there is only a couple of months, if that. When something deploys to a new edition, you got to make that decision. If you really enjoy the game, if it's gone through its life cycle and you're kind of indifferent about playing it, you say, okay, you know, I'll move on. I'll play something else. And maybe you just hold your collection as is, or maybe you liquidate it. Maybe you put it in the back of your closet and it sits there. But if it's a system that you enjoy, it is very binary. You need to decide, buy in, maybe sell your old edition to someone like me to finance the new edition, maybe conversion, maybe just from complete scratch, buy in, or really accelerate and now pick up those pieces for a lot less, that you can complete your collection, fill out your collection, and have massive battles. And ultimately, it comes down to, what's the community like? And again, there is a massive, just using X-Wing as an example, because I knew it was coming, there is a big X-Wing classic community. But even if there wasn't, I have enough wargaming friends, and I enjoy the system myself, that it would be very easy to host a game night and say, let's play X-Wing miniatures and let's have a big battle. And it would be very, very easy to get a couple of friends over, roll some dice, flip some cards, push around some spaceships, and see what happens. From that perspective, just because a game is dead doesn't mean you are unable to play it. You are unable to evolve a community. And especially with the internet being able to plug in, and virtual communities and networking, more than ever, games that are completely dead, they're still out there. They're still playable. There is still a community, an active community for many of these games. And I think that's only going to accelerate as the hobby advances and as things move ahead. I think we're going to see less and less of how we saw things even 10 years ago, where once a gaming system was no longer supported, you had to get out. You had to get out because that's it. No one's ever going to play it. And you can't solo a war game yourself effectively. That has very much and completely changed.